"Say hi to the sharks," she whispered, and that sweet voice was the last thing I heard before the world turned black. The words still echo in my ears. One second, I was smiling at the horizon. The next, a cold hand shoved between my shoulders. I stumbled, gasped, and fell straight into the black water of Narragansett Bay. My son's face was the last thing I saw before the sea swallowed me. He just stood there, frozen, silent, watching his mother sink. The water was ice, sharp as glass. Salt filled my mouth, burning my throat. I tried to scream, but my lungs filled with cold instead of air. And in that moment, one truth burned through the panic. They wanted me gone. My own blood and his perfect wife had turned on me. But I didn't die that night. That morning had started like a dream. The Rhode Island sun was soft, glittering across the bay. I, Lorraine Whitaker, 68 years old, had just finished 6 weeks of recovery after my hip replacement. When my son Caleb called to say, "Mom, we want to take you out on the yacht, celebrate your recovery," I almost cried with joy. It had been so long since he'd called without asking for money or favors. I thought maybe grief had softened him after his father's death. Maybe this was his way of reconnecting. I chose my navy dress, the one Robert used to love, and tied the silk scarf he left me. In the mirror, I saw an older woman, slower maybe, but still full of hope. I believed family still meant something. At the marina, their yacht gleamed like a white ghost on the water. The name carved into the hull made my stomach twist. Evelyn's Dream, my mother's name. I had never given permission for that. Still, I smiled when Caleb opened his arms. "Mom, you look beautiful today," he said. But his hug was hollow, all show and no warmth. Behind him stood Marissa, my daughter-in-law, red lips, smooth smile, eyes like ice. "You look wonderful," she purred. "Let me make you a mimosa. Something special for today." I thanked her, forcing a smile. But something in her tone made my heart dip. As the yacht pulled away, waves sparkled like silver coins. Caleb talked about simplifying things, telling me I should let him and Marissa handle my finances. He said, "You don't need the stress of paperwork anymore, Mom." Marissa nodded sweetly. "You just focus on healing. We'll take care of the accounts." I smiled politely. "I'm still clear enough to sign my own checks, Marissa." Her red smile sharpened. "Of course, Mom." Sometimes people just don't notice when memories start slipping. My fingers froze around the glass. A chill crawled up my spine. Her phone lay on the table, camera aimed at me. She pretended to take selfies, but I knew better. They were recording me. "I want to go back," I said quietly. Caleb's tone changed. "No, Mom. You need to hear us out." The sea hummed around us. My pulse pounded in my ears. "You're scaring me," I whispered. "We just want to be sure everything's in order," he replied. "You know how messy legal stuff gets if anything happens." Marissa leaned closer, voice sweet as poison. "Remember what the doctor said about short-term memory after surgery. It's better if someone can sign for you." I stared at her, then at my son. "Are you implying I'm losing my mind?" She smiled. "No, Mom. Just thinking ahead." The air turned cold. That's when I noticed the camera still pointed at me, the glasses of champagne untouched in front of them, the yacht drifting farther from shore. Newport shrank into a thin gray line. I knew. They weren't taking me out for celebration. They were taking me out for erasure. I stood, the deck swaying under my feet. "Turn the boat around," I said. Caleb didn't move. His eyes were flat. Then Marissa stepped closer, her perfume heavy and sweet. "Say hi to the sharks," she whispered. The shove was small, almost gentle, but it was enough. I lost balance, the world flipped, and I hit the freezing water. The shock stole my breath. Pain exploded in my hip. The sea roared in my ears. Above me, I saw two blurred shapes looking down, Caleb's face blank, Marissa pretending to scream. Then they turned away. I kicked, legs heavy from the dress, lungs burning. The instinct to live clawed through the panic. Robert's voice echoed in my mind. "The ocean doesn't kill you, Lorraine. Fear does." I fought. I broke the surface once, twice, choking on salt. My voice came out as a hoarse whisper, "Help! Somebody!" A light flashed in the dark. A boat. A man's voice shouted, "Hold that line. Pull her up." Strong arms grabbed me. The next thing I knew, I was on a rough wooden deck, coughing, shaking, half blind. The man who saved me was broad-shouldered, sunburned, with tired blue eyes. "Ma'am, what happened? Where'd you fall from?" I gasped between breaths. Don't call the Coast Guard. Let them think I'm dead." He frowned. "You running from the devil?" "Not the devil," I said, voice breaking. "My own blood." He stared for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Name's Hank. I fished these waters. All right, I won't call, but you need to get warm fast." Wrapped in a coarse blanket, I felt the boat turn toward shore. Every bump of the waves was a heartbeat reminding me I was alive. And if I was alive, then I still had power. Hank took me to a small dock hidden by fog. A narrow road led to a weather-worn inn with a faded sign, "Asha's Bay Inn, Rooms and Breakfast." An older woman opened the door. Asha Patel, calm eyes, warm smile. "She's freezing," Hank said. "Needs a place to stay." Asha nodded and led me upstairs. Hot water, clean towels. "Don't worry, we don't ask questions here." Under the shower's heats, I closed my eyes. Salt, blood, fear washed down the drain. But the memory stayed. Caleb's face, Marissa's whisper. "Say hi to the sharks." When I came down, Asha handed me hot tea. "You've been through something dark," she said softly. "Whatever it was, you're safe here." I looked out the window at the sea. The same sea that had tried to claim me now whispered like an ally. "They think I'm dead," I said. "And that's good. I'll stay that way for now." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the tide slide over the rocks, replaying every small sign I'd ignored: the missing phone calls, the lawyer who stopped answering, the strange papers Kayla brought after my surgery. It all made sense now. This wasn't an accident. It was a plan, and I had just survived it. I picked up the pen from the nightstand and wrote in a trembling hand. "They wanted me gone. They took everything. But they forgot one thing I know how to fight quietly." The sound of waves outside was steady, calm, patient. And so was I. They killed me on paper before my body was even dry. But I wasn't gone. I was watching from the shadows. The TV in Asha's inn crackled again. "Tech billionaire Lorraine Whitaker presumed dead after tragic yacht accident." My own face filled the screen, smiling, dazed, holding a glass. The headline below read, "Family confirms early Alzheimer's diagnosis. Memorial to be held at Oak Ridge Cemetery." I stared at the image. The woman on that screen looked alive but erased. They had buried me with lies, all while I sat here breathing. Asha stood in the doorway, arms crossed, quiet. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" I nodded. "I didn't think it would be this fast." The news anchor continued, "The Whitaker family requests privacy as they grieve. Son Caleb Whitaker and his wife Marissa ask that the public remember Lorraine for her philanthropy and gentle spirit." Gentle spirit. I almost laughed. They made me sound like a saint, the kind who dies conveniently when her assets need moving. 3 days later, I walked to Oak Ridge Cemetery. The morning was gray, air heavy with rain. I wore a black coat and wide hat borrowed from Asha. From behind the trees, I watched my own funeral. A crowd of familiar faces surrounded the open grave. My son stood in front, head bowed. Marissa clutched his arm, her face a picture of sorrow. Cameras clicked. Everything was perfect, rehearsed. The pastor's voice carried softly. Lorraine Whitaker was a kind woman who lost her battle with age and memory. Each word struck like a stone. Battle with memory. They were cementing the story. I moved closer, unseen. The grave was real, the coffin real, the tears fake. Marissa pressed the handkerchief to her face. No tears fell. Caleb's shoulders trembled, but I knew that twitch. It was guilt, not grief. When everyone left, I stepped out from the shadows and approached the headstone. Lorraine E. Whitaker, 1957 to 2025. Beloved mother, gone too soon. I traced the carved letters with my gloved hand. You wrote me off too early, my dear. A single daisy lay in my pocket. I set it on the soil, not as farewell, but as a promise. You wanted me gone quietly, I whispered. Now I'll make noise loud enough to wake the dead. Back at the inn, Asha brewed coffee, listening carefully as I explained. I need to know who helped them. They couldn't have done this alone. She nodded slowly. In Newport, there's a name that comes up when money moves fast and quiet. Bianca Mercer. Lawyer. Handles inheritance and trust cases. Too clean to touch. I wrote the name down. It matched something I'd seen before. Project Lorraine, scribbled on Caleb's old notes. That night, I opened the old laptop Asha kept at the counter. I created a fake email under a new name, Evelyn Hunt 2025. Using it, I began digging through online court filings, company records, and trust transfers. Hours passed. My coffee went cold, but by midnight, I found it. Mercer and Hale Advisory Group listed as temporary custodians of the Whitaker Trust. My trust. They had moved everything. My shares, my accounts, even the rights to my late husband's patents. All of it transferred pending review. My pulse thudded in my ears. Pending review meant legally dead. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred. I'm not dead, I whispered to it. Not yet. Morning light crept through the curtains. I hadn't slept. My mind burned with questions and rage. I called Hank. He arrived smelling of sea and salt, carrying 2 coffees. You sure you want to dig into this? He asked. These kinds of people, they clean up messes by making bigger ones. I met his eyes. They threw me into the ocean, Hank. The least I can do is learn to swim back. He smiled faintly. All right, sailor. He knew someone, a private investigator in Boston, retired cop. Name, Evan Ross. Guy's got a moral compass, Hank said. If there's dirt under those rich shoes, he'll find it. Evan came the next day. Tall, tired eyes, a face carved by truth. I handed him everything I'd gathered. Financial logs, fake reports, new screenshots. He flipped through the pages quietly, then said, You're not paranoid. You're there, Mark. His voice was calm, but what he found was not. He traced the trust transfers and found matching entries. Mercer and Hill Advisory, Kane Holdings, Whitaker Family Management. All transactions done within 72 hours of my death. That's not an accident, he said. That's laundering. He leaned back, rubbing his chin. There's also a clinic connection, North Shore Family Wellness Institute. Looks like Marissa donated a large amount right before your will was changed. My breath caught. A clinic? Yeah, Evan said. Private fertility and medical research facility. But I think it's just a front. He slid a photo across the table, Caleb and Marissa walking into the building, wearing dark glasses, carrying an envelope. Something in me broke. What are they doing there? Don't know yet. But I'll find out, Evan promised. Days passed. I stayed hidden in the inn, pretending to be a tourist from Maine. Asha covered for me. At night, I couldn't stop thinking about that clinic. My intuition screamed that the secret was bigger than money. Then Evan called. Lorraine, I found something. He met me at a small diner off the highway. When I saw his face, pale and tight, I knew it wasn't good. There was a girl, he said quietly. 18. Her name was Talia Reed. She was a surrogate at that clinic, hired by a couple who paid cash. No records, no ID. I froze. And? She died during childbirth. 'Cause listed as complications. But nurses said she was healthy until a routine injection. Then she seized. My hands shook. And the baby? He exhaled. Alive. Handed to the couple. No trace after that. The diner noise vanished. My heartbeat filled the silence. You have names? Not full ones. Just initials, C&M. I stared at him, trembling. Caleb and Marissa. The night outside the diner stretched forever. I walked to the window, staring at the passing lights. They killed her, I whispered. A young girl who only wanted a better life, and they used her to create an heir. Evan's voice was low. You think the baby is alive? I nodded slowly. Alive and hidden in my house. Back at the inn, I told Asha everything. She didn't flinch, only poured tea and said, Then you need proof. Proof the world can't deny. That night, Evan and I made a plan. Every Tuesday, Caleb and Marissa left the house for 2 hours to meet Bianca Mercer. That was our window. The next Tuesday came gray and cold. I wore Hank's old gray coat, hair tied back, and carried a folder with photos, letters, and the nurse's testimony Evan had gathered. I rang the doorbell of the house that used to be mine. A woman opened, blonde, early 30s, holding a baby. Her name tag read Nora. Can I help you? She asked softly. I took a breath. Yes, I'm Lorraine Whitaker, Caleb's mother. Her face drained of color. That's not possible. You're dead. I shook my head. No, I'm very much alive. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The warmth of the house hit me, familiar and cruel. There, in her arms, a baby stirred. His eyes were deep brown. His tiny hand curled around her sleeve. What's his name? I asked. They call him Robert Jr., I smiled sadly. No, his real name is Rowan. Rowan Talia. Nora frowned. Who's Talia? I pulled a photo from my folder. A young girl, smiling shyly, eyes full of hope. This is Talia Reed. She carried that child, and she died the day he was born. Nora stared at the picture, tears forming. Oh my God. They told me she died peacefully. That the baby was adopted legally? No, I said. She was murdered. And I have the proof. I spread the documents across the table, records, faxes, the signed files with Bianca Mercer's name. Nora's hand trembled as she read. They planned everything. Even your accident. I nodded. Now I need you to help me end it. Together we set up hidden cameras. Evan handled the connections. One in the nursery lamp, one in the study clock, one in the vase near the fireplace. Nora whispered, What do you want me to do? And act normal, I said. Record everything. The calls, the visits, the meetings. I'll handle the rest. She nodded, clutching the baby. For him, she whispered. That night, I sat by the inn window again, listening to the wind off the bay. Evan's message flashed on my phone, hidden mics active. First upload tomorrow. I looked out at the sea, calm, endless, familiar. They thought they had buried me in those waters. They thought I was gone. But I was learning to breathe underwater. They thought I drowned. They thought I was erased. But I've learned something from the sea. The tide always comes back. Then it's time, I whispered. Time to come back from the dead. Evan nodded, eyes steady. You sure you're ready for this? I was ready the moment they pushed me overboard, I said quietly. Now I'm going to push back. The morning light over Newport was cold and pale, streaking through the fog like thin blades. We sat at Asha's small kitchen table, Evan, Hank, Asha, and me, going over the plan again and again. Every move had to be silent and sure. One mistake, and I'd vanish for real this time. Evan laid out the files across the table. These, he said, are the copies of Project Lorraine and the trust transfer documents. I've confirmed signatures from Bianca Mercer and Edward Kane. Everything is linked through Kane Holdings. He tapped a page showing Caleb's name beside the words executor pending confirmation. Tomorrow, Mercer files these at the county court. That's when your death becomes permanent, legally and financially. Asha frowned. So when she signs, it's over? Not if we intercept her first, Evan replied. I leaned forward. I'm not going to stop them. I'm going to let them finish it, while I record every word. Asha's eyebrows rose. You'll face them yourself? I nodded. They expect a ghost. I'll give them one. That evening, as the tide rolled in, I went back to my old house. The world was quiet. Even the gulls seemed to watch from the power lines. The back gate was unlocked. Caleb had never changed it. I moved through the garden where I once grew roses and herbs. The air smelled of damp soil and faint perfume, the kind Marissa wore. Inside, the house looked untouched, too clean, too perfect. My portrait was gone from the wall. In its place hung a glossy photo of Caleb and Marissa, smiling at some charity event. The baby's rattle lay on the sofa. I froze when I heard soft crying from upstairs. A baby? Rowan. For a moment, I almost forgot revenge. I just wanted to hold him, to protect what little innocence was left in this world of greed. But footsteps echoed in the hallway. Voices. I ducked into Robert's old office, the one that had always been locked. To my shock, it wasn't locked anymore. Inside, the air smelled of paper and ink. Files were spread across the desk, and the whiteboard was full of notes in Marissa's tidy handwriting. At the center, underlined in red, Project Lorraine, Phase 3, Accident Complete. I felt a chill crawl through my body. Each phase was listed clearly. Phase 1, medical report fabrication. Phase 2, trust transfer. Phase 3, boating incident. Phase 4, court declaration of incapacity. Each step carefully planned, each crime hidden beneath legal paperwork. At the bottom of one file, I saw initials I hadn't noticed before. BM, Bianca Mercer. My suspicion was right. She wasn't just helping, she was running it. I pulled out my small camera and started snapping pictures of every page. Each click felt like justice taking a breath. Suddenly, headlights flashed through the window. My heart lurched. Someone was home. "Die door?" Marissa's voice floated through the hall. "Yes," Caleb replied. I just wanted to grab the tablet. I killed the flashlight and pressed myself against the wall. My pulse roared in my ears. I could hear them laughing softly, talking about dinner. Then, a sound I didn't expect. A baby's cry. They had brought the child home again. Rowan. I froze, listening as Marissa's tone turned sharp. She still doesn't sleep well. Maybe we should get that doctor again. Caleb sighed. You mean the one from North Shore? Yes. He handled things quietly before. He can adjust the formula. My stomach turned. Adjust the formula. What did that mean? I slipped toward the window, but before climbing out, I looked once more at the whiteboard. Under the list of phases, a note glowed faintly in the lamplight, ensure infant legitimacy before audit. File must show lineage. They were using that baby as proof. Proof of their inheritance. Proof of my extinction. I slipped out into the night, heart pounding. Back at the inn, I showed Evan the photos. His jaw tightened. This is enough to blow the whole thing wide open, he said. But we need one thing more, a confession from Mercer herself. Then I'll get it, I said. He looked at me, worry in his eyes. You can't just walk into her office. Who said I'd walk in? I replied with a thin smile. She's going to come to me. The next morning, Evan made a few calls. Using a fake name, he scheduled a private consultation with Mercer and Hale Advisory Group, posing as a client representing a new trust worth millions. The bait was set. All we needed was for her to take it. That afternoon, Nora called. Her voice was trembling. They are leaving the house. Both of them. Said they have to meet someone named Bianca at the firm. Perfect, I said. Keep the baby safe. Don't open the door for anyone. She whispered, Be careful, Mrs. Whitaker. They're dangerous. I smiled faintly. So am I. Evan and I drove to Newport's financial district. The Mercer and Hill office was a glass tower, tall, sleek, and cold, like the people it protected. We parked across the street in a rented car. Evan had set up tiny recording devices in his briefcase. Once she starts talking, he said, we get everything. At 3 p.m. sharp, a black Mercedes pulled up. Marissa stepped out first, heels clicking, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Caleb followed, pale and stiff. Then Bianca Mercer appeared, polished, graceful, carrying a leather folder. Through the window, I watched them sit at a long glass table. Bianca opened her file, and Evan's hidden mic began transmitting faint voices. Inheritance finalization, Bianca was saying. Once the probate court certifies incapacity, The assets passed to you both. Clean, legal, final. And no one can contest it? Caleb asked. Not if the death certificate holds, Bianca replied. The autopsy confirms accidental drowning. It's flawless. My fists clenched. Marissa laughed softly. Lorraine always loved the sea. It's poetic, really. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. Evan whispered, "We've got them on tape." But I shook my head. Not enough. She needs to confess to the pattern, the other victims. Evan frowned. Lorraine, I'll handle it, I said. Tell her the ghost wants to talk. That night, Evan slipped an envelope onto Bianca's desk. Inside, one line written in my own hand. The woman you buried is waiting for you. Come alone if you want to survive the storm you started. The next evening, a black car stopped outside Ash's Inn. Bianca stepped out, heels clicking on the wet stones. She looked around, cautious, before knocking on the door. Asha glanced at me once and opened it. We've been expecting you, she said quietly. Bianca stepped in, removing her gloves. Where is she? In the back room, Asha said. I waited by the window, facing the dark sea. When she entered, I turned slowly. Bianca froze. For a heartbeat, she looked like she'd seen a ghost, and maybe she had. Mrs. Whitaker, she said finally, voice tight. You're supposed to be dead. I smiled faintly. So they tell me. Her mask slipped back into place. You've caused a lot of trouble. You caused a lot of graves, I replied. Bianca's jaw tightened. You have no proof. Oh, I do, I said, holding up my phone. Every document, every transfer, every recording. Even your little phase plan, phase 3 accident complete. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes flickered. You don't know what you're dealing with. There are people far above me. I don't care, I said softly. You're the one who signed my death. She took a slow step forward. You think you can threaten me? I've buried 30 people like you. The words hung in the air like poison. 30, I repeated quietly. Thank you. Her face blanched as she realized what she'd said on a live recording. Evan's tiny mic in the lamp captured every syllable. Bianca exhaled sharply. What do you want? Justice, I said. And for those you silenced to finally speak. She sneered. You can't win. The system protects me. Then I'll burn the system, I whispered. At that moment, Hank appeared in the doorway, holding his phone. Police are already on their way, he said. Bianca's face drained of color. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just turned on the light. 10 minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. Bianca ran for the back door, but Evan stepped in front of her. End of the line, he said calmly. The police stormed in, and within minutes, Bianca Mercer, the woman who turned elder care into murder for profit, was in handcuffs. As she passed me, she hissed, You can't save your son. He's too far gone. I stared at her, voice calm. Maybe, but I can save the truth. The next morning, the story broke. Elite lawyer arrested in elder trust scandal. Project Lorraine, the quiet murders of the wealthy. Photos of Bianca in cuffs filled every screen. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. But I stayed silent, watching from the same window where I once hid from the world. Asha came over with tea. You did it, she said softly. Not yet, I murmured. They are still the ones who pulled the strings. That afternoon, Evan came back with grim news. Bianca's partners are already disappearing. Edward Kane withdrew $500,000 last night. Mercer's files are encrypted. And there's talk of a cleaner being sent from New York to erase loose ends. I looked up sharply. Loose ends like me. He nodded. You need to leave town. Now. I'm not running anymore. That night, the sea outside the window was calm, too calm. I sat in the dark, watching faint lights blink across the bay. In the next room, Rowan slept peacefully in Nora's arms. His tiny breaths were the only sound that soothed me. I whispered to myself, You survived, Lorraine. But survival isn't enough. You have to finish it. The wind picked up, rattling the window. It felt like the ocean calling again, not to drown me, but to remind me what it takes to rise. They came to finish the job. But this time, I wasn't the prey. I was the storm they never saw coming. Let them come, I said softly. This time the ocean won't take me. I'll pull them under. The words hung in the air like a vow. Asha stood behind me, holding Rowan close. The baby stirred, sighing softly in her arms. Outside, the waves hissed against the rocks like something alive. The inn was dark, the lamps off, the door bolted. But I knew bolts wouldn't stop men like the one Evan warned me about, the kind who made people vanish before sunrise. I turned toward the window. The sea fog had rolled in thick, swallowing the docks. Somewhere out there, a boat engine murmured, low, steady, patient. "They're here," I whispered. Hank, who had been sitting at the kitchen table polishing his old hunting rifle, looked up. "Then we don't wait," he said. "We make the first move." Evan called again. His voice was low, urgent. "Lorraine, listen. The cleaner's name is Darian Hall. He's ex-military. Works for the same people Bianca worked for, the real ones behind the whole operation. He doesn't talk. He doesn't miss. You need to leave the island right now." But I shook my head. If I run, I'll never stop running. I need to see who he works for. There was silence on the line. Then Evan sighed. "All right. If you're staying, record everything. I'm 30 minutes out." I hung up and looked at Hank. "Can you handle a gun?" He smirked. "Ma'am, I've hunted bigger beasts than men." I believed him. We killed every light in the inn. The only glow came from the small lantern near the stairs. Asha sat near Rowan, whispering prayers under her breath. The baby's soft cooing made the silence sharper. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like thunder. I moved to the front window, careful to stay in the shadows. Through the fog, I saw headlights flash once, then die. A dark car, engine still running. A man stepped out, tall, broad shoulders. He wore a black coat, no hat. Even from a distance, I could see his face was calm, too calm. He wasn't nervous. He'd done this before. He didn't walk toward the inn right away. Instead, he lit a cigarette, looked toward the sea, then turned slowly, scanning, watching, waiting. My heart thudded, but I kept breathing steady. When he finally approached the door, Hank whispered, "I've got him in sight." "No," I said quietly. "Let him knock." We waited. 3 slow knocks. "Miss Whitaker?" a voice called. Deep, controlled. "I'm here to speak about the Mercer case." He didn't sound like a killer. He sounded like a lawyer. That's what made him dangerous. I stayed silent. Another knock, louder. "I know you're inside. You've made quite a mess, ma'am. It's time we clean it up." Hank gripped the rifle tighter. I nodded once. The door swung open fast, too fast for an old man like Hank to react. Darian stepped inside, his pistol already drawn. "Drop it," he said calmly. Hank froze, rifle halfway up. Darian's voice stayed even. "You don't want to die tonight, old man." I stepped out from behind the wall, hands raised. "He's not the one you want." Darian turned his gaze to me. His eyes were like glass, empty, gray, and endless. "So the ghost lives," he said. "You're harder to kill than they said." "Depends who's trying," I replied. He smirked slightly. Brave words for someone who can't run far. I took a slow step forward. "You've killed a lot of people like me, haven't you? Women, old men, anyone who stands between your bosses and their money." He shrugged. "I don't kill people, ma'am. I remove problems." "Then tonight," I said quietly, "you've got a problem that bites back." Before he could aim, Hank fired. The bullet shattered the window behind Darian, missing him by inches. The cleaner dove sideways, rolling behind the sofa, returning fire. Wood splintered. Glass burst. Rowan started crying upstairs. "Get down," I shouted. Asha grabbed the baby and ran toward the back room. Darian moved like a shadow, quick and precise. He fired twice, warning shots that pinned Hank down. Then he said, "You think this ends with me? I'm just a messenger." "Then deliver one for me," I called out. "Tell them Lorraine Whitaker is done being erased." He chuckled low and rough. "You think you're the first one to fight back. Every ghost screams before the water closes." "Not this ghost," I said. Evan's car engine roared outside. Darian froze, realizing he was outnumbered. He aimed once more at the stairs, and I threw the iron teapot straight at his head. It hit hard. He stumbled, fired a wild shot, then Hank tackled him to the ground. The fight was short, brutal. Darian was stronger, younger, but Hank fought like a man protecting his soul. Evan burst through the door, gun raised. "Freeze!" Darian looked up, panting, and saw the gun pointed straight at him. For the first time, he smiled, not out of fear, but understanding. "You think arresting me changes anything?" he said. "You have no idea who's above Mercer." Evan pressed the barrel against his shoulder. "Then start talking." Darian's smirk faded. "You can't touch them. They're not just lawyers or doctors. They're government contractors, investment heads, even judges. You take one down, 10 more rise." He leaned back, eyes on me. "You lit the fire, lady. Let's see if you survive the smoke." Evan cuffed him, secured the weapon, and handed it to Hank. "Get Asha and the baby," he said. "We're moving her now." But as soon as he said it, a deafening blast shook the house. The car outside exploded into a ball of fire. Evan ducked, shouting, "Down!" Heat and smoke filled the air. The windows shattered inward. Asha screamed from the back. I ran toward the stairs, shouting, "Asha! Rowan!" She appeared in the smoke, coughing, holding the baby close. "We're okay," she called out. Darian laughed, coughing blood. "Told you. They don't leave loose ends." Evan dragged him up by the collar. "Who set that bomb?" Darian smirked. "Ask your boss." Evan's eyes flicked to me. "He's lying," he said, but there was something uncertain in his tone. I stared at him. "Your boss?" He shook his head fast. "No, I work freelance." He's bluffing. But the seed was planted. We fled the burning inn through the back door, moving toward the docks. The night was chaos, the fire lighting up the fog like dawn. Hank carried the baby. Asha limped beside me. Evan led the way. Behind us, the flames swallowed the only safe place we had left. "Where do we go now?" Asha gasped. "The island," Hank said. "Morgan's Rock. No one knows it exists." We pushed the small fishing boat into the water. Smoke trailed behind us as we left the coast. The baby whimpered softly. I held him close, whispering, "Shh. It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to the quiet now." When we reached Morgan's Rock, the world was still. The island was small, just a weathered cabin, dry grass, and seagulls crying overhead. Hank cut the motor. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. We went inside. The air smelled of old wood and sea salt. Evan set up his laptop, connecting to a satellite line. "We still have the files Bianca gave up. If we upload them to the feds, we'll have no choice but to open a full investigation." "Do it," I said. He hesitated. "Lorraine, if we do this, they'll know you're alive." I looked out at the horizon. Good. I want them to know. While Evan uploaded, Asha rocked Rowan to sleep. The sound of the waves mixed with the faint hum of the laptop. Hank poured himself a drink. "Never thought I'd end up hiding from lawyers and hit men in my old fishing shack," he muttered. I smiled faintly. "You saved more lives tonight than any courtroom ever did." He shrugged. "Just another storm, ma'am. They all pass." But in my gut, I knew this storm wasn't over. The next morning, Evan woke me with a look that chilled my blood. "Lorraine," he said, "they found Darian's body." "What?" "He was supposed to be in custody, but someone intercepted the transfer. Shot him twice in the chest. Clean hit." "Who?" I asked. Evan rubbed his temples. "No one knows. But before they killed him, he made a call to a number registered to a government database. A private one. He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a blurred photo of a woman in a black coat walking out of a federal courthouse. "That's her," Evan said. "The one running everything behind Mercer." "Who is she?" He hesitated. "Margaret Torrance, Deputy Director of the Elder Welfare Oversight Commission. The same person who signed the authorizations for every trust transfer in Bianca's files." I stared at the screen, the woman's face sharp and cold. "So it was never just greed," I said softly. "It was policy." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something stronger than fear. Purpose. "How do we expose her?" Evan's eyes flicked to the baby sleeping in Asha's arms. "We already have enough to link her. But if we show the baby's DNA matches the surrogates, it'll prove the illegal adoption. That breaks the whole chain." I nodded slowly. "Then we do it. We prove Rowan is Talia's child." Asha looked up. "But how? You can't just walk into a lab." "I don't have to," I said. "I'll walk into the courthouse instead." We waited 3 days for the storm to calm. The Coast Guard's patrols moved farther out. The news cycle shifted to other scandals. On the 4th morning, Evan handed me a new ID, forged papers, and a folder marked witness statement. "This will get you into the courthouse," he said. "But once you're inside, there's no turning back." I smiled faintly. There never was. The courthouse smelled of disinfectant and marble dust. I walked in like a ghost wearing someone else's skin. Hair dyed brown, glasses low on my nose, dressed plain and gray. In the hearing room, Margaret Torrance sat behind the desk, calm as ever, reviewing files. I walked up slowly, handing the clerk my papers. "Lorraine Whitaker, here to submit new evidence regarding case 22BM. For a moment, Torrance froze. Her eyes flicked up. She looked at me like someone recognizing a face from a nightmare. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said finally, voice thin, "you are alive." "Yes," I said softly, "much to your disappointment." Her hand twitched over the papers. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "I'm making sure your graveyard of ghosts finally speaks." Cameras clicked as security guards surrounded me, but I raised my voice, calm, clear, certain. For years, this woman signed fraudulent incapacity rulings, transferring billions from elderly victims to her network. When I refused to die quietly, they pushed me into the sea. But I survived, and I brought proof. I opened the folder. Inside were the photos of Project Lorraine, Bianca's recorded confession, and the DNA report Evan had rushed overnight from the Boston lab, a perfect match between Rowan and the late Talia Reid. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Margaret Torrance's face turned white. "You can't prove chain of custody. The recordings prove everything," I cut in. "Every life you sold under the name of Mercy." She stood, shouting for order, but the cameras had already captured her face, the face of the woman who made murder sound like healthcare. By evening, the story was everywhere. Government official behind Elder Trust murders exposed. The Whitaker case, dead woman returns to reveal national conspiracy. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Crowds gathered, holding signs that said justice for Lorraine and stop the silent killings. But I didn't stay. As night fell, I slipped out through the side door with Evan and Asha. Rowan slept peacefully against my shoulder. "I think it's over," Asha whispered. I looked out at the horizon. "No," I said softly. "It's just beginning. But this time, we're not running. We're living." They tried to bury me twice. Once in the sea, once in silence. But you can't drown the truth. It always floats back up. "She's not done," I whispered. "And neither am I." The storm outside the cabin had grown stronger. The wind slapped the windows, howling like the ghosts of every soul Margaret Torrance had silenced. The sea foamed and hissed against the rocks, as if it, too, was hungry for justice. I turned the card over in my trembling hand. The black wax seal bore a faint insignia, the outline of a trident. That same symbol had appeared in the corner of Bianca's original documents, the ones labeled Project Lorraine. Asha looked at me, her face pale. "What does it mean?" It means, I said, there's someone even higher than her. Evan took the card from me, scanning it under the lamp. Trident Holdings, he muttered. Private conglomerate. Defense contracts, eldercare acquisitions, pharmaceutical research. All tied together under one name, Torrance Global. I laughed softly, bitterly. She didn't hide it very deep, did she? She didn't need to, Evan said. People like you build their castles in plain sight. I looked out the window, where the rain smeared the glass into streaks of silver. Then we'll knock it down brick by brick. For the next 2 days, we hid on Morgan's Rock, planning our final move. Asha stayed with Rowan, who had begun smiling again, blissfully unaware of the war raging around him. Hank repaired the boat's engine and cleaned his rifle in silence, while Evan pieced together every bit of data from Bianca's drives. At night, I barely slept. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret's calm, smirking face behind the judge's bench, unbothered by the storm she'd created. She had sent a killer once. If she sent another, there might not be a second chance. So instead of waiting for her to come for me, I decided to go for her. Are you out of your mind? Evan hissed when I told him. She's surrounded by private security. You can't just walk in. Why not? I said quietly. I walked into her courthouse, and she already thinks I'm fearless. She also thinks you're predictable, he replied. That's what she'll be counting on. Then we'll surprise her. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You have a death wish, Lorraine. No, I said, looking out at the waves. I have a life to finish. By the third morning, the plan was ready. Evan would hack Torrance Global's internal servers through Bianca's old network credentials. Once we accessed the files, I'd personally deliver them to an investigative journalist, someone outside the government's reach. The only way to expose a system this big was to flood it with sunlight. We chose a name everyone in Rhode Island trusted, Sarah Hunt, lead reporter for the Coastal Herald. She had been covering my case since the day my death was announced. Evan made the call. Mrs. Whitaker is alive, he told her. And she's ready to talk. There was silence on the other end. Then Sarah said, You bring her to me tonight. We set out at sunset. The water was dark and smooth as oil. Hank guided the boat through the fog, while Evan monitored the signal on his tablet. The city lights of Newport flickered in the distance, golden and false, like a kingdom built on lies. When we reached the marina, the place was nearly empty. Only a few fishermen and dock workers moved under the lamps. We left the boat tied under the pier and headed inland. Sarah's office was on the third floor of a weathered brick building near Thames Street. She opened the door herself, short, sharp-eyed, dressed in denim and determination. Holy hell, she breathed when she saw me. You really are alive. Alive and ready to raise the dead, I said. She smiled faintly. Then let's make them listen. For hours, I told her everything. The push from the yacht, the forged reports, the fake diagnosis, the transfer of trust, the murder of Talia Reid, the baby, the cleaner, the explosion, the card, every piece of it. Sarah's hands shook as she typed, her eyes wide. This isn't just murder for profit, she said. This is organized extermination, wrapped in legal paper. Evan placed a flash drive on her desk. These are the files from Torrance Global's encrypted server. Every transfer, every name, every death certificate. If you publish this, the whole network burns. Sarah nodded slowly. It'll take time to verify everything, but once it's live, it can't be buried. Not even by her. Good, I said, because she'll try. We left her office just past midnight. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick. Evan walked beside me, scanning the corners. Something's off, he murmured. He was right. The air felt heavy, charged. When we turned the corner toward the marina, a black SUV idled near the curb. Its lights flickered once, a signal. Then it pulled forward. Run! Evan shouted. We sprinted down the street as the SUV roared after us. Bullets cracked the pavement. Glass shattered. I stumbled, falling against the trash bin. Evan grabbed my arm and pulled me toward an alley. They found us, I gasped. He fired twice behind us, shattering the SUV's headlights. The car screeched to a halt. Doors flew open. 2 men jumped out. We ran through the maze of back streets until we reached the old docks. Hank's boat waited, engine idling. "Get in," he shouted. We leapt aboard. The motor roared, cutting through the dark water. Behind us, gunfire echoed across the bay. But we made it, barely. By dawn, we were back at Morgan's Rock. Asha met us on the shore, clutching Rowan. "What happened?" she cried. "They tried to stop us," I said, breathless. "But they failed." Evan collapsed onto the sand, exhausted. "Sarah got out clean," he said. "I saw her lights go dark right before we left. She'll publish it." I stared at the horizon. The sun rose like a wound. "Then she just painted a target on her back," I whispered. For the next 48 hours, the world went quiet. Too quiet. No news. No updates. No sign of Sarah. On the third morning, Evan checked his email. His face went pale. "What is it?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A message, no subject line, from an anonymous account. "Your journalist met the tide." Attached was a photo, a shoreline, a pair of broken glasses, Sarah's glasses. I covered my mouth, choking back a sob. "She knew too much," Evan whispered. "They silenced her before she could publish. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Everything blurred. The rage, the grief, the exhaustion, all of it boiled into something cold and sharp. "No more hiding," I said. "No more waiting for them to strike. I'm ending this myself." That night, I packed the flash drive and Bianca's confession, wrapping them in waterproof plastic. Hank begged me to reconsider. "Lorraine, you walk into that lion's den, you may not walk back out." "Then I'll make sure they go down with me," I said. Evan grabbed my arm. "I'll come with you." I looked at him, this man who had risked everything for a stranger, and smiled sadly. "You've done enough. Keep them safe. If I don't come back by dawn, take Asha and Rowan somewhere far away." He didn't argue. He just nodded. Torrance Global's headquarters stood like a fortress at the edge of the city, all glass and steel, reflecting the clouds above. I walked through the revolving doors as the night guard waved me in, unaware that he was greeting a ghost. The elevator hummed as it rose to the top floor. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm, but my heart was a drum. When the doors opened, Margaret Torrance was waiting. She sat behind her desk, perfectly composed, a cup of tea steaming beside her. "You made it," she said softly. I stepped forward. "You killed her." She tilted her head. "Sarah Hunt? A tragic accident. She drowned, you know." The irony is exquisite. I clenched my fist. "You won't win this time." "I already have," she said. "The public believes what we tell them. You're a myth, Lorraine. A confused old woman chasing ghosts. Then let's see how your ghosts handle daylight." I placed the flash drive on her desk. Every document, every transfer, every recording. One click and it's live to every major outlet in the country. I sent the link to myself scheduled for sunrise. Her calm cracked for the first time. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I said. "Try me." She stood slowly, her heels clicking on the marble. "You could have been part of this," she said. "You had power, money, influence. You could have been untouchable." "I'd rather be mortal," I said. "At least mortals still bleed truth." She smiled faintly. "And die quietly." Her hand moved to her desk drawer. I heard the soft click of metal, a gun. "Don't," I warned. But she didn't listen. The shot rang out, deafening in the silence. For a moment, I thought she'd hit me. But she staggered instead, eyes wide. A red bloom spread across her chest. Behind her, Evan stood in the doorway, gun still raised. "She drew first," he said quietly. Margaret fell to her knees, choking on her breath. "You can't stop it," she rasped. "There are others. There will always be others." I knelt beside her, meeting her gaze. "Then I'll keep coming back, as many times as it takes." Her eyes glazed over. Then she was still. We stood there in silence. The rain began again outside, tapping the glass walls like fingertips. Evan lowered the gun. "It's over." No, I said, looking out at the horizon. Now it begins. By sunrise, every major news network had the files. The story broke across the world. Torrance Global exposed in multi-billion-dollar elder trust scandal. Hundreds of families seek justice for the disappeared. The public outrage was unstoppable. Arrests spread from Newport to Washington. Every name in Bianca's files faced investigation. And for the first time in years, the truth was louder than their lies. Weeks later, I stood on the pier where it all began, the place I was meant to die. The sea was calm again, the sun gentle on the water. Asha stood beside me, holding Rowan. Evan leaned on the railing, a faint smile tugging at his tired face. Hank was mending nets nearby, whistling off-key. "You did it," Asha said quietly. "No," I said, watching the waves. "We did it." Rowan reached out a small hand toward the sunlight. His fingers closed around nothing, and yet everything. Hope, maybe. I smiled. He'll never know what monsters tried to own him. That's enough for me. Evan looked at me. "What will you do now?" I turned toward the horizon. "Live? For every ghost that never got the chance." As the tide rose, I took one last look at the water that had nearly claimed me. I whispered softly, "You took me once. You gave me back twice. We're even now." The wind carried my words away, and somewhere deep beneath the waves, I imagined the sea smiling the same way justice sometimes does, slow, patient, inevitable. And that was the story of a woman the world tried to erase, but she came back louder than the storm. If you were moved by Lorraine's journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and shake the soul, and comment below.